Previously on Shadows Born of Light.
Well. It seems we have caught ourselves a troublesome little rat.
You're delusional. There's no way a hive ship can be kept a secret.
All stations, priority extremists. Tyranids have boarded the Hierophant.
Lord Chaplain Exantis. Message from Master of Whispers, Mikal. Message classification, extremist.
Play it.
I must inform you that I have concluded my investigations into the Archbishop.
That thing speaks malice.
I have obtained undeniable proof that the Archbishop is a heretic.
You are the heretics!
The Archbishop has deceived us all.
Begin log. This is the final report of Mikal Kierkegaard, Master of Whispers to Lord Chaplain Exantis of the Black Templars chapter. May the throne be exalted. Know then that this is a record of how Archbishop Zephanius doomed Void Station Sheol, of how shadows are born of light. Void Station Sheol was founded by the Adeptus Ministorum in 968 M41 upon the mineral-rich asteroid belt designated Gallius Optima. The adamantine deposits there faithfully fed many hungry forge worlds in the eastern fringe, but shortly after its founding, economical exploitation by the ruling families led to the malcontent of its miners. The station devolved into a hive of lawlessness and anarchy. Clans of pirates swooped upon the dying station, and it soon became a hub of villainy that infected the entire sector. The Munitorum, occupied by emerging war zones in neighboring sectors, refused to send a retribution force to reclaim Sheol, and so the station was left to rot and atrophy. Only after a decade was a reclamation force assembled, not by Munitorum decree, but by an as of yet unknown bishop by the name of Zephanius. The criminal underworld plagued his planet of origin. In a tragedy born of a turf war between two of the underworld factions, Zephanius' wife and unborn child became collateral damage. The mortified bishop lost everything, but quickly returned to ministering after several days of mourning. He began preaching fiery sermons, calling for the eradication of all things sinful. The righteous fury of the populace soon bubbled over into religious fervor. The ecclesiarchy, eager for an opportunity to undercut the Munitorum, sanctioned a war of faith to cleanse the heathens. Naturally, the Munitorum was informed only after billions of Fritaris militia were running amok across the entire sector. Years of bloody conflict proved shockingly effective, as the War of Faith almost eradicated the criminal empires that had taken root. This became known as the War of Pious, named as such after the heaps of sinners burned in holy fire. Before long, the Zealots had seized control of the Void Station back from the heathens. With no central government left in Sheol, Zephanius, who many began seeing as a savior, was proclaimed interim regent and given the authority to administer the station while the Munitorum searched for a more permanent candidate to replace him. Conveniently, the Munitorum seemed to have lost the necessary documents for succession. And so with no suitable candidate found, the ecclesiarchy remained stewards over the Void Station, even as they bestowed the honored position of Archbishop onto Zephanius to reflect his new appointment. All the while, Zephanius continued his purge of the pirate clan remnants. It was during one of these witch hunts in which Zephanius descended to the Rat Quarter to apprehend a notorious crime lord who had sought shelter with the Red Rock Mining Guild. They barricaded themselves within a long-abandoned mine, closed off years prior due to hazardous materials. Eventually, the Fritaris militia breached the mine and slew the crime lord, but that was when they came face to face with a dormant Tyranid hive ship, encased within the thick ice of the ancient asteroid. This revelation changed everything for Sheol. Zephanius faced a terrible dilemma. If he reported this, the station and all non-essential personnel aboard it would be condemned to oblivion. All that he had sacrificed his entire life for would be obliterated in one of the biggest scandals the ecclesiarchy had seen in over a decade. Alternatively, he could remain silent about it. The hive ship was frozen solid in ice and appeared to pose no threat to the inhabitants aboard the station. And so Zephanius, desperate to find meaning to all his sacrifices, chose to cover up this dark secret. Nearly 3/4 of the militia that followed him down that day were terminated. Only those he could fully trust became his enforcers under the guise of the reinstated Red Rock Guild. Under Zephanius and his inner circle, Sheol flourished, oblivious to the terrible truth of their salvation. But Zephanius' sin would be dragged into the light as the hive ship began to thaw. The mysterious disappearances, the legend of the Aluka, stories such as these began spreading. Zephanius had them silenced, but the truth could not be suppressed. And that was when we arrived. Lord Chaplain, no doubt you would be trying to destroy the hive ship. Forgive my audacity, but there is no hope for Sheol. The infestation runs too deep, and the strength of our fighting company is insufficient to completely eradicate the Xenos. I implore you, set aside your honor and retreat from this accursed place. Seek aid and return with the might of a whole crusade. It has been an honor serving with you, Lord Chaplain. When your time comes, I will be glad to greet you at the Emperor's side. Until then, Ave Imperator, Gloria in excelsis terra. The Tyranids have boarded the Templar strike cruiser after the failed defense of the boarding tube. The once hallowed halls of the mighty ship are now infested with all manners of scuttling creatures. Chaplain Exantis and the Sword Brethren have rejoined Cedric and must now take back their ship, starting with the Central Cogitator Housing, the data center for the Templars' combat network. The hive mind knows that if it severs this data center, the Space Marines will be left without command and control and will be unable to coordinate an effective resistance. This could be the coup de grace for the Templars. The remaining Space Marines on board the ship have severed power to the data terminals. can they hold out long enough for reinforcements to counterattack. Power the generators is an asymmetric mission from the Boarding Actions Compendium. The map is split into the upper and lower decks, with the upper deck containing 3 data terminals, and the lower deck containing 3 generator objectives. At the end of the command phase, for each generator the Tyranids control, they can power up 1 data terminal, which will score them 10 victory points if it is under their control. To do this, the Tyranids will have to descend from the upper deck to the lower deck to control the generators. But they will have to pass through these access hatches at the end of their movement phase to the corresponding hatch on the lower deck. These hatches are treated as the same tile for the purposes of engagement range. The Tyranids will only be able to score depending on how many powered data terminals they control, while the Templars will score based on how many points of Tyranids they destroy. And so as the defenders, the Templars automatically get the first turn. The Crusaders hear scuttling above and adopt a cautious defensive position.
Hold position, Overwatch. Around the wall, with haste!
The Crusaders refuse to open the hatchway, preparing an ambush for whatever comes down the access point. Cedric, Greston, and the Sword Brethren finally arrive back on the Hierophant, accompanied by Apothecary Hamlin. Cedric reclaims command and orders the Templars to hold. They will let the swarm come to them. The swarm hisses in frustration, and the Hormigons bound towards the data terminal, while avoiding the access hatch, not wanting the Templars to fight them in melee across decks. The warriors follow closely behind to provide synapse. The swarm mirrors the Templars' tactics, securing first the data terminals, while their deadly beasts move into position, preparing for the real attack. The Gene Stealers hold the access hatch, daring anyone to take it from them in melee. The Zoanthropes open the hatch, while a stealthy lictor scuttles towards the access hatch and descends towards the lower deck. It relishes the fear of its prey, as the Templars hear hooves clatter in the room behind them. Brother Torvus's ears are sharp and hears the lictor behind them. He alerts Brother Diedrich, and the two of them cautiously move to investigate. With hand signals, the rest of the Sword Brethren are alerted to the threat and follow closely behind. The intercessors stack up against the bulkhead, watching the access hatch carefully.
The fury of battle will come soon enough, brothers.
And so do the Crusaders. Any Tyranid that attempts to seize control of the generators will be pounced upon by the might of the Emperor. Chaplain Exantis arrives on the Hierophant, just as the Sword Brethren declare a charge unto the lictor. Diedrich hefts his thunderhammer and charges in. The beast lashes out, dealing 2 damage to a sword brother, but failing to bring him down. The Sword Brethren strike back and completely pummel the beast into a bloody pulp. The swarm has lost a potent melee unit. The attack must come now. The Hormigons shuffle aside, performing the secure sight action to retain control over the data terminal, while making space for the warriors to descend the access hatch. The Gene Stealers follow suit. The lower decks will soon be set upon by the creatures. The Zoanthropes perform the secure sight action, as a Broodlord bursts out from the pipe above. With the data terminal secure, the Termagants advance and open the hatchway. With all data terminals secure, the warriors descend to the lower deck. Though they are unaware of the Crusader squad, crouched in ambush behind the bulkhead. A neophyte is the first to hear them. His initiate master pushes him to take point. The neophyte is eager to prove himself, and he rounds the corner, bolt pistol raised at the warriors. Greston hears the Gene Stealers above them. He yells for the other Sword Brethren to take cover behind the bulkhead, which would prevent the Gene Stealers from charging them. Chaplain Exantis marches up, ready to support them, for when the Tyranids descend the access hatch, and the chaos of melee begins. The Crusaders unload their heavy bolt pistols and charge the warriors. 5 Space Marines is more than a match for these creatures, but with skillful parrying, one manages to stay alive. The swarm cannot afford to lose more trading pieces, but with the Gene Stealers already in position, the Broodlord moves to the access hatch to join his kin on the attack. The brood of Hormigons and Termagants swarm onto the access hatch, intending to overwhelm the Space Marines with sheer force of numbers. The Gene Stealers slither to the lower deck, and the Broodlord follows them, asserting its synaptic power. The Gene Stealers fail their charge, and they use a command point only to reroll the same result, which is just 1 inch short of making a successful charge. The Crusaders fight across decks. They take out the warrior and a significant amount of Hormigons. The Tyranids are on the back foot now, with most of the swarm picked off piecemeal. The Sword Brethren suppress the Gene Stealers with unrelenting fire, and the Crusaders stack up against the bulkhead, preparing for a charge. Chaplain Exantis orders the Sword Brethren to move up. Diedrich keeps his distance, using his plasma pistol to suppress the Gene Stealers, allowing his other brothers to get slightly closer. This is an advanced boarding actions tactic to draw a line of sight while having a shorter charge distance. Exantis follows closely behind,
hearing the Broodlord in the other room.
All guns, open fire! We bring death to our enemies! Focus your hate upon the Xenos!
The Crusader squad ascends to the upper deck, immediately coming into engagement range of the Termagants. Genestealers dodge Diedrich's plasma fire, which allows the others to make a charge, just barely making it in. And they easily cut the Genestealers down. The Crusaders on the upper deck utterly annihilate the Termagants. And take the terminal from them. The Tyranids are on the verge of defeat, but they will cause as much damage as they can. They power up a generator and corrupt the data on the terminal. The Zoanthropes then move towards the access hatch, while the Broodlord, too late to aid the Genestealers, opens the hatchway directly in front of the Sword Brethren, rearing itself for a charge, with the Zoanthropes following closely behind. It easily makes the charge, climbing through the hatchway and swiping at the Sword Brothers. Brother Torvus and Borman are brought down, and its claws dig into Diedrich's shoulder. But before the Broodlord can deliver the finishing blow, Greston steps in front of him, his blade raised. He parries the relentless strikes, before countering with a powerful thrust into the beast's cranium, claiming vengeance for his defeat at the mining dock. Diedrich turns towards Greston and offers him an approving nod. No words are exchanged. He feels a weight lifted off his shoulders. The Templars have completely purged the lower and upper decks, securing the terminals. Apothecary Hamlin provides medical assistance, and all that is left is to deal with the Zoanthropes. The Sword Brethren advance towards the beasts, their psychic fire doing nothing to the Templars' armor. Chaplain Exantis rips open the hatch, and with a deafening war cry, charges the Zoanthropes, as the Sword Brethren join him. Exantis swings his Crozius, brutalizing the Neurothrop. He slams his shield into its tail, before slamming his Crozius into its face. As the creature erupts into a spray of viscera, the Sword Brethren too make short work of the remaining Tyranids, and thus ends the battle in a clear Templar victory.
Chaplain Exantis slams his shield into a zoanthrope, severing its tail with a brutal crunch. It roars in pain and hurls a blast of psychic energy at him. The green energy fizzles against bright golden light as the chaplain's Rosarius energy shield dissipates the energy. Exantis slams his Crozius into the creature's face, and again, and again. Even as rigor mortis works its way across the creature, the chaplain's strikes are unrelenting. His skull helmet was now drenched in gore and viscera, as Cedric finally mustered the courage to approach the chaplain.
Deck clear, my lord.
Exantis heaved several hard breaths, dissipating his anger.
Good. And Greston?
Right on cue, the younger swordsman runs up to them.
Data integrity confirmed, Lord Chaplain.
Excellent. I'm going to clear the bridge. Cedric, ensure thorough cleansing of the engine room. Greston, go with Diedrich to the weapons deck. I want bombardment cannons ready to pummel this accursed station.
What of the civilians?
How many?
Give or take 400.
Assess their loyalties. Strike down any devotees of the Archbishop.
Yes, my lord.
Both sword brethren saluted in unison. But both stood awkwardly silent for an uncomfortable moment, drawing a perplexed glance from Exantis. Cedric suddenly spoke up.
My lord, I would apologize again.
Enough, both of you. We have all failed in our duties these past few days. Stop being burdened by it.
Yes, Lord.
Cedric, I need your strategic mind to coordinate the fighting company. And Greston, I need your swordsmanship to cut a bloody swath through this filth.
Both sword brethren remained silent, contemplating the chaplain's words, heads dipped in reflection.
Thank you both for fighting beside me in this trying time.
Exantis waited for his words to sink in to both of them. He eyed them carefully, reading their expressions before speaking again.
Now, to your duties.
Suddenly nausea bled into their brains again, as the shadow in the warp pulsated once more. Visions of creatures gnawed at their minds. Exantis could feel a tentacled creature sliding its tendrils into his mental defenses. It fed him visions of a dying Mikal, a burning world, and the eternal Crusader, flagship of the Black Templars, cleaved in twain by a behemoth of the deep. But far from instilling dread, these visions only served to make his twin hearts burn with righteous anger. The oppressive veil soon lifted. Cedric rose to his feet, clutching his head, as did Greston. The pain was worse than usual. They were evolving too quickly.
Damnable beasts,
Cedric spat.
We have no time to waste. Go!
But just as they turned to leave, a familiar alarm klaxon sounded within their combat network.
Auxiliary distress beacon.
But how? Mikal is dead, isn't he?
Look, that's where the hive ship is.
This reeks of an ambush.
Maybe.
Exantis muttered.
Pardon, Lord Chaplain?
He is still alive.
What makes you so sure?
A guess.
That seems highly unlikely.
Mikal would never activate the beacon without reason.
Greston chimed in, to the surprise of both Cedric and Exantis.
And it is too convenient to be a trap. If the Tyranids wanted to ambush us, they would have chosen a less conspicuous location.
What are you both implying?
Perhaps Mikal is trying to tell us something.
Exantis drifted into thought.
Lord Chaplain.
Greston suddenly had an epiphany.
He risked his life to bring us a comprehensive summary of the conspiracy, and his report seems highly precise. What if we're missing a critical piece of this puzzle?
What do you mean?
What if there's something far worse that he has discovered?
Cedric glanced back and forth between Greston and Exantis. The chaplain was in deep thought. Greston maintained his gaze on him, watching as the chaplain pieced together the theory. And soon, Cedric came to the same logical conclusion.
What if you're wrong?
Then I will answer for it.
Greston's eyes were filled with conviction now.
I concur with Greston.
Exantis finally lifted his gaze to them both.
but I cannot justify spending our remaining strength on speculation.
Then I will go alone. Let it be my penance.
Don't be ridiculous.
I was wrong to doubt Mikhail's integrity. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. Let me do this, Lord Chaplain.
Cedric turned to Exantis. The chaplain's gaze was affixed firmly onto Greston.
Follow me.
The chaplain turned towards the armory and beckoned the sword brethren. They passed through a long corridor, adorned with the skulls of honored Templars fallen centuries prior. Banners streamed from the ceiling, depicting grand deeds of glories past. Finally, they arrived at a set of huge doors. Upon it was a carving of Sigismund's final duel against Abaddon the Despoiler.
Lord Chaplain, why have you brought us here?
A nearby servo skull scanned Exantis. It chimed and let out a whir. Incense suddenly poured out from sensors nearby as the doors creaked open. The dark room soon lit up as candles were lit by more servo skulls within. Exantis stepped inside without a word. The two sword brethren followed after him. As Greston and Cedric entered, they were struck with majesty at the size of the armoring chamber. It was 5 times their size, far larger than any they have used before. Exantis stopped in front of the large arming dais and turned to face them. Behind him were 5 sarcophagi, each bearing extravagant carvings and markings of honor. As Greston and Cedric approached, servo arms lowered each of the sarcophagi, and then they were opened.
Greston, I grant you permission to undertake your penance, but you will need this.
Exantis gestured for Greston to approach a sarcophagus. The young sword brethren marched up to one and peered inside. He immediately fell to his knees in front of Exantis.
My lord, I cannot accept this honor.
A flicker of light illuminated its contents, and when Cedric caught sight of what was within, he too fell to his knees. For before them lay an honor bestowed upon few. Terminator armor.
Your conviction to your duty is worthy of admiration, Greston. And I can see your deduction was made after careful, deliberate thought. I therefore see fit to bestow our chapter's most prized relics onto you, so that you shall be clad with faith and fury to fulfill the Emperor's will.
A pair of cherubs descended towards the armoring dais, bearing a hefty power sword. They floated before Greston and offered him the weapon.
I see the promise of a legendary swordsman within you. And thus, I would like you to lead the Terminator squad into battle.
Greston reverently accepted the blade. His eyes lifted to meet Exantis's, and he was left speechless.
Come, let us meet our deaths with fire in our hearts.